Hey, welcome everybody to Pro Mindset Podcast. This is your host, Craig Domann. Today we have a superstar guest, Nicole Zapoli. Nicole, welcome to Pro Mindset.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so Nicole is a fitness guru. She does CrossFit. She's an author. You've done like 10,000 things. You're a coach, you're a mom. Share, what is your banner on your social media that accentuates who you are right now, what you're doing right now?
A lot of things. I am a mom. Yes. I have a mobile and remote fitness and wellness coaching business. And so between those two things, I am living a very full life. And then I also compete professionally in natural bodybuilding. I also just wrote a book that launched about 2 months ago called Live Fit from the Inside Out. And it's just about my approach to living, my own personal approach to that, but then also how I approach fitness and wellness coaching with my own clients.
Okay, it's not too often, Nicole, that we have someone on that's a female that has bigger cannons than I do. So I can tell you're fit. Okay, so you have a program and it's about the 6 shifts.
Yes.
Why don't we just jump right into, how you change the world, how you can impact people's lives. And I'm sure it's centered around those principles.
Yeah. So my 6 shifts is sleep, hydration, intake, which is nutrition, thoughts, which is mindset, and then, oops, I forgot fitness. That's very important. And that is the F in the shifts framework. And then the last S is for sunshine. And so those are the 6 shifts or daily habits that are basically the foundation of living your strongest, healthiest, happiest life. And how I approach life, what I've basically shared in my book, and which has kept me moving in the direction that I wanted to go for the majority of my life, and how it's evolved since that time, and how I probably would not be here today without those 6 shifts, and how we can continue to build and get better and kind of grow through those, and how we evolve through those and making it part of our own life. Yeah, the actual shifts, so it's each letter stands for one of those 6 shifts. And the reason I chose that word is a memory that I have when I was growing up, learning how to drive. And it's a memory that really stands out in my just kind of that I have carried on with me since this experience that I had with learning how to drive a standard. I am originally from Texas, and my dad owns an auto repair shop, and he has since well before I was born. And that is just something he is very passionate about and very, very good at. So I grew up around cars and all of the things, and have been driving since I was probably, a little bit young to be driving, but I grew up driving on the beach and down old country roads, and learning how to drive an actual standard on this specific truck that my dad had restored. And my uncle Fishhead had rebuilt the transmission on, and he wanted me to learn how to drive on this truck. And it was very challenging for me, and had some interesting, fun adventures learning how to drive this specific truck. And I share about that in the book. And so there was a moment where I was getting on the freeway trying to just get my truck moving, and my dad was there with me, and I was sweating. It was in the middle of the summertime in Texas, and it was very hot, and the air conditioning had gone out on the truck, and I was just pouring sweat, super nervous. I was the first one to try and get onto the freeway, and there were a long line of cars behind me. And everybody's honking, trying to, wanting to get through the light. And I cannot actually make it start moving. I keep stalling, and I finally get it going, but I'm barely moving. And all these people are flying around us. And my dad was as calm as could be, and was just like, I looked over at him, and he just reassured me. He said, do not worry about anybody. You're doing fine. We're going to make it through. Let them go around. It's totally fine. And so I'm in first gear, finally moving, and I'm getting onto the actual freeway in first gear. No intention of shifting at all. Like, I was completely fine staying in first gear, and I was planning on doing that the rest of the way back. And my dad told me to just very calmly, it's like, you need to just push the clutch in and I will help you shift. I will, we're gonna get through this, don't worry, and just push the clutch in. So I did, and he helped me shift gears the rest of the way back. And from that moment, I mean, I really did not, I had zero desire to ever get back in that car or truck again. I definitely did not want to drive a standard, but taking that whole experience, my dad, encouraged me to give it another shot and to continue to practice. And my confidence began to grow with that. And so taking that whole experience, life experience right there, that was felt very traumatic in the moment, and overcoming that to figuring out, wow, so many of us are stuck in that first gear with no intention of shifting because it's scary and it's, uncomfortable and it's out of our comfort zone to shift to that next gear. And then having an experience like that, not wanting any part of it for the rest of your life, you'd be totally fine. But then having that gentle encouragement of, give it another chance. Like, it's totally fine. You can, continue to work on this and get better at it. And having that calm, steady, just supportive presence was so helpful during that time. And if I hadn't had that, I probably would have never gotten back in the driver's seat of that to even attempt driving again.
Nicole, let me jump in for a second. I only got fitness, thoughts, and sunshine. What were the first three? S, H, and I.
Yeah. So the first one is sleep. The second is hydration. And then the third one is intake, and that is nutrition.
Okay. So I want to start peppering you with questions here so we can lock in on a few things on a deeper level.
Okay.
So you have this metaphor of driving a manual transmission and learning that first gear only goes so fast, and it's a lot more difficult to drive a manual transmission than automatic. That's why 99% of vehicles are probably automatic except for trucks, because it's easier on transmissions to have a manual transmission. If you were going to pick one of those six, which one is the one that most of your clients overlook the most? I mean, they have blind spots in this area.
I don't know if it's about necessarily like overlooking, but I would say the one that the more awareness we have around it and the more focus and priority we place on it, the better results they're going to get and see across short-term and long-term, which would be mindset.
Okay, so let's talk about mindset. You probably have a framework of some type under each one of those six shifts. What is your framework for thoughts? Because that's mindset, I'm guessing.
Yeah, so this one goes pretty deep. I mean, we could get into a lot of stuff here. In chapter 4, I go pretty deep into looking at the difference between self-worth and self-confidence, and how mindset, of course, plays a huge piece with those two things as well.
How do you define? I'm gonna ask you questions. How do you define worth?
So your self-worth is knowing that you are worthy of fill in the blank. So whether that is, um, taking care of yourself, you're worthy of being healthy, you're worthy of living a high quality life. All of those things, the idea that it can't be earned, you can't work super hard to earn that worth. You already have to know that you have that within you. You're already worthy as you are. The confidence piece. So you could know that you're worthy, but not have confidence. You could be really confident and not know your own worth. And so that's the scariest part. I mean, both of them are obviously like very important and they both work together, but really your worth is the foundation of the house on top of it, which is confidence. And you build that confidence first after you've established that self-worth and understanding of your own worth.
One of the things in pro mindset that's very similar to that is your worth is your belief in who you are, and confidence is in what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're a human being, it's your worth. When you're a human doer, it's your confidence. And that I tell my clients that worth is a choice. It's a daily choice. You have to decide if you believe in yourself and you're worthy or not. Confidence is dependent upon whether you can do it or not, how competent you are. And, it surprises people when you tell them that you can have different levels of confidence for lots of different things that you do. You'd be very confident. Like if you're a gymnast, you could be confident in certain things in the gymnastics world and other things you're not.
Mm-hmm.
And so even in normal life, be confident about saying no to food, but not be confident about going to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I completely agree. It is very interesting when you start to really look at it and start to bring more awareness to the differences between self-worth and self-confidence. What is self-worth and what is, self-confidence, and how they're both important, but how, I mean, you really can't have one without the other if you're looking to live your healthiest, happiest, like most resilient life, strongest life. And so within like my own personal life, figuring out the difference between those two, because there was a time when I put more emphasis on building my self confidence and feeling confident in certain things, but not understanding my own self-worth, and then figuring out, bringing more awareness to that in my own life, and then figuring out how to overcome that or build and grow in those areas so that I had a stronger foundation under me.
Well, one of the things that I see is that you have a crack in your identity if you're not 100% worthy or 100% of a believer in who you are.
Hmm.
But your confidence doesn't ever have to be 100%. You can, like a basketball player can really be confident about shooting threes, maybe not as much about shooting free throws, maybe not as much about rebounding or playing defense. And when you identify the gap between 100% and confidence and where you're at, that's your to-do list. So that's where you go get more reps. But tell me, in your opinion, with worth, is it a decision?
Hmm.
Because you said it wasn't earned. So what is it?
Yeah, I would definitely say it's a decision for sure. And it is the way you show up for yourself. It is the way that we take care of others that we love in our own life, like our kids or our significant other, our mom, our dad, how much we love them and we care for them. In the same way, how do we love and care for ourselves? And do we feel we're worthy of our own love and our own care and our own all, fill in the blank, and enough to, live in that same way? That I would say is probably the biggest thing right there.
Okay, so let's go back to your story. What was a time and place where you didn't feel worthy? You didn't have 100% belief in you, and how did you increase it? When did you become aware that it was actually a decision and start living worthy?
Yeah. So this has been a journey my whole adult life. Um, and I have had lots of these experiences throughout my adulthood for sure. The Probably the very first time, I think this was probably the most significant thing that I can recall, was when I was 19 years old and I auditioned for the Houston Texans cheerleaders for um, the NFL, and I made the team. I didn't tell anybody. At the time so when I was 17, I was attending a church, and I had begun dating the assistant youth pastor, who was still a student, uh, and the head pastor decided that he felt it was God's will that we get married. I was still a kid and did not have a super I guess, strong support at the time in my own family life at that time. So hearing that and then hearing that it was God's will, I was terrified of letting God down. So decided to listen to the pastor because he said it was God's will. And we got married when I had just turned 18. And um I won't go into a bunch of that, but that was definitely very significant time in my life, and it was a bit traumatic. It was very, very hard for me to kind of mentally wrap my mind around my life because I kind of felt like all of a sudden all my hopes and dreams went out the window and they didn't basically felt like they didn't matter anymore and I was just someone's wife and to a pastor who was under someone that believed that women shouldn't speak and women just should be submissive and all of those things. So the opportunity came up for me to audition for the Houston Texans and I decided I was going to do this. And I had only talked to my husband at the time. He felt it was necessary that we seek out permission from the head pastor because of just his position in the church. And the pastor initially he said, sure, go ahead. And I made it. And when we, let him know, he was not supportive in the way that he was initially. And he just said, well, I didn't think you were going to make it. So I thought, for sure, like you wouldn't make it. And then went on to say that there's no way that I would be allowed to do this past the year and referring to NFL cheerleaders in a way that was very, and I share about this in the book, but it just as a young girl, I mean, I was still a teenager to think of that. It was just a lot. For he referred to, and I don't know if this is okay that I'm even sharing this on here, but he referred to NFL cheerleaders as glorified prostitutes, and that was how he was like what he basically was saying to me and about all the girls that I had just made the team with. I just felt a lot of emotion at that time, and it was very tough in my mental space because first, to make the team, you either need to be a full-time student, full-time, have a full-time job, full-time student, or both of those, of course. And then the job of being an NFL cheerleader is a lot of time outside of that. And so the pressure of taking on that new role, along with the pressure of being a leader in the church, knowing that what he thought of me in my head at that time.
Hang on one second. I've got to ask you this. You're 19. You're married. You tried out for the Houston Texans cheerleading squad. You made it. And your husband's boss doesn't approve.
Mm-hmm.
It's important what he said, but it's more important what you were telling yourself.
Yes.
Back then, what were you telling yourself in your mind when you were driving to the Texans cheerleading practice, when you were cheerleading in front of 60, 80,000 fans at the Energy Stadium there? What was going on in your mind?
Yeah. At that time, it was definitely really interesting. I wouldn't know actually or have much awareness about this until many years later. I think I was just trying to survive and in my emotional state. I had or chose to focus on more so of just what I needed to be doing. It was enough to be making sure that I'm where I need to be at what time and, learning choreography and being able to do all of that along with I owned my own business at the time. And so running that, doing all of that, and then the criticism from the church. The mental space that I was in, I really believe came from just my background in gymnastics and then my early life with my family and having a pretty strong support from them early on and that really strong foundation of mental toughness that I had built over the course of my life, it was already there. And so the magnitude in which I was of the pressure that I guess I had on me at that time, and the thoughts and the beliefs I had in myself, um over, I guess, they took precedence over what he thought of me. Yeah, it still was a struggle, of course, like just being in the space of the church and around the people within my husband's life, and of course that was also part of my life, but to do that, I don't know. I feel like I kind of transcended that, what could have been probably not a very healthy time for me emotionally or mentally, but somehow I don't know. Didn't I don't know. I
Let me let me
having
let me ask a different question. Nicole, you're living a double life. You're living a life that your husband's boss did not agree with. You are in conflict. So when those things are happening, either you stink it up and struggle and fail as a cheerleader, or your marriage suffers, or your husband stands beside you and leaves his job, or you end up divorced, or you end up hating the church because you think that this pastor is representative of Christianity. So what path did you take?
I took the path of hating the church. I had a group of friends at the time, after they found out that I had made it, all sat me down. This was like very planned out, and had me sitting at this table in a restaurant where they took me, like we all rode together, so I couldn't leave. I had no idea what was going to happen, but sat me down at this table and all went around rebuking me for my sin and telling me that I needed to repent, um, because I obviously had a problem, or like a sin issue.
And these were all members of the church?
Yes, they were all friends of mine that I had been friends with for at least, well, some since I was like in elementary school. And then several that I had already, had been friends with for about 5 or 6 years at that point. So that was really tough because I knew that they probably would not be very supportive of this new adventure in my life, but I also was not expecting to experience that. And that was
Now that's what you call an intervention, where they're trying to tell you what's good for you. And sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. So there's this power struggle going on
Mhm.
between your dreams, your identity, your passions, and what these people thought was best for you. When did you come to the realization that you need to double down on you and not necessarily listen to other people? When did that happen? And what did that look like?
Gosh, that's a good question. So, a few years later, my husband told me he didn't want to be married anymore, and so he ended up leaving. And it was around that time I decided to I kind of started doing everything. I started training for a marathon. Um, I enrolled back in school. In kinesiology, and then I just, yeah, I kind of just started putting all of my energy to my daughter, of course, number one, and then all my extra time was kind of spent working on these new goals to keep my mind at least like focused on positive, healthy things. And it was also that year I then auditioned for the Houston Rockets, and it was almost like I don't want to say in spite, but it was kind of like my way of being rebellious, I guess.
It's rebellious. It's really basically saying that, hey, I'm going to be me. Did you make the Rockets?
I did.
Okay. So here you are, a two professional sport cheerleader. You've got a daughter. You're divorced by now.
Mhm.
Okay. So how many years ago was that?
That
22?
was that I was 25. How old am I? That was 17, about 17 years ago.
Okay.
And
So
oh, yeah, go ahead.
This is a podcast. This is not therapy, and this is not me interrogating you, but I just got to know because this really digs deep into your mindset.
Yes.
I'm a big believer that everything that happens is for you, not against you. And there are God, are you back with the church? Are you from the church?
I do not hate the church anymore. I am definitely a believer. I have my own personal relationship with Christ, with God, and I don't feel like I have a very good, solid community and fit fam. Very supportive, encouraging, just amazing, top-notch people in my life. I am not ready to let myself get close, or I might be, I don't know. It's definitely do see going back to church in some capacity in my future, but I am still, I really think I am still like healing and wrapping my mind around that, but I definitely had to remove myself for a good while.
Okay.
Been a good
So the church has people that hurt people. The church has people that are controlling. And you obviously ran into someone like that. Controlling, manipulative, dictating, all those kind of things. And some churches have those people, most don't. But what I want to know is, and you already have church.
Mhm.
You don't, we all need church, but you don't need church. You've got the relationship, right? If you have a direct connection to the Lord, you don't need a pastor's approval.
Mhm.
Okay? At least that's my perspective. But now looking back 17 years, I want you to reframe that event, that time.
Mhm.
And I want you to tell me the blessings, the benefits, the empowerment, just all the pluses
Yes.
of what happened then, because it's made you who you are today
Mhm.
to be on this mission to help other people.
Yes.
It's helped you become an author. All these things are like the genesis
Yeah.
of who you are in 2025.
Yes.
So I want you to tell that story again in a different way, in the sense of, it's almost you were fortunate to be, almost like coerced into getting married at a very young age.
Mhm.
It's helped you do blank. You were, it wasn't ideal, but there's certainly benefits to having a manipulative pastor and all these things, and turn it around and see if you can turn it around.
That same year that I finished at just a moment ago, right after I tried out for the Rockets, I started CrossFit. And it was then that I was confronted with my mental space in a way that I had never been before. And all of my thought process from the prior years of like 8 years prior, leading up to that point would end up being really loud in the middle of workouts. And it was a very interesting because CrossFit was the hardest thing I had ever tried at the time and done and still is today. And it is very uncomfortable and painful. And it was really interesting thoughts that would pop into my head when stuff would get really challenging or really painful or hard, or I would get really fatigued in the middle of these workouts. It was all of everything that I had kind of pushed down during those years. And so then, looking back on that, it was very eye-opening. And so going back, I guess a lot of blessings for sure. Like I definitely do believe that the pastor really was trying to protect me. I do feel like I don't think that he was trying to like do something that he didn't think was the best thing for me and for us. Even though, I had different feelings towards him or towards the whole thing at the time. Um, and despite all of that, the relationships, even, aside from that, really seeing, and they did do an amazing job. They were a little intense, but as far as community building within the church and seeing it done firsthand and being part of so many amazing things, just so, doing so much good through all of the other stuff. And then also seeing stuff from a lot of times we see only one side of things and we don't really see what goes on behind the scenes. And so, that was all very eye-opening. And And just the women that I met during that time, the older women, they had so much amazing wisdom and knowledge to give to me. And stuff that I still reflect on and still use in my life today. And, they were all around. I mean, I do think that they had good intentions, but and then it also, of course, like when I think back on all of this and now with a lot more life experience, understanding that people are people and that none of us are perfect, even pastors. And so just having a lot more, it's given me a whole completely different perspective on life. Like I have so much more compassion, patience, and empathy towards people that I probably would not have if I hadn't gone through all of that. ah,
Okay, so let me regurgitate what I'm hearing. And if I say something inaccurate, please correct me because I may not have been as attentive listener as I thought I was. But what I hear you say is that from now on, you have free will and you make your own decisions. And even though people have opinions and influence, you have to live your life, walk your path, not what someone else tells you should do. And that was thanks to the pastor. Okay. And then I think the next one is you got a big dose of seeing who your real friends were
yes.
because we all have friends, but not all of them are genuine. And as long as you see the world through the same lens they do, your friends,
Hmm.
if you have too many differences, they're not friends anymore. And I think that back then your community looked through a certain lens and you were not doing what they were doing. And you probably have better friends today.
Yes.
Okay. And then the third thing I see is this strong will. Tried out you tried out for the Texans despite the fact that there was this undercurrent of like shame or like shouldn't do it.
Hmm.
And then when you made it, it all came to a head because that's when the pastor made it known he didn't think you were going to make it, so he didn't want to tell you what to do, but he was kind of telling you what to do. And I think that is very powerful as a woman and as a young person too, even your daughter, to be able to do what you're convicted about instead of what everybody tells you to do. So I see free will, strong will, and real friends as the benefits to what happened to you.
Hmm.
Agree, disagree?
I agree. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So today, how do you coach people when you see that they're falling into the same trap you did of allowing somebody else to tell them what to do?
Hmm.
Somebody else is doubting them, so now they're doubting themselves. How do you coach people when you start seeing those same markers in their life that you experienced in yours?
Hmm. Yeah. So it's very powerful as far as, I mean, approaching fitness from mindset perspective, just that knowing each of us are going through certain things that we may not be sharing or talking about. The other is I am just their coach. They're the ones that are actually doing the work. And, I can be the best coach in the world, but if they're not on the same page as me or they're, whatever, one of my core values is teamwork. And so we each match each other's effort. So the more effort they're putting in that that mindset of showing up for themselves, maintaining their consistency, and putting in the work, I'm going to be just as much, if not more, giving them the very best. Obviously, I'm always going to be giving my best to them, but that's like the more, and that could show up in they're working really hard and they're progressing, and maybe something's not quite challenging them as it once was. So we're going to continue to build on that. And they're willing to get outside of their comfort zone a little bit to continue to progress and get stronger and get fitter and healthier in those ways. But it has to be their choice. I am, and their action taking. I am there just as part of their support team and their guide and to give them the best support and guidance that I possibly can give them. But then they got to, do the rest of that.
Well, there's a lot of crossover between coaching and parenting. So as a parent, if you remember back when your daughter, do you have more kids now?
I have, yeah, so I have my daughter, and then my son who is about to turn 3.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you've got like a 20 something year old
Huh.
and a 3-year old. Okay. So for your 3-year old, there's 3 roles that I see, and I'm oversimplifying it a little bit, but I'm not. There's 3 roles as a parent. You're a protector. For your 3-year-old, you have to be a protector. How many times is too many times to ask your daughter or tell your daughter or your son, I'm sorry, to look both ways before he crosses the street? You like have a limit in your head. Once you hit that limit, you don't tell him anymore.
No.
You will tell him 500 times in a day if you have to. If you're in a situation where you're crossing a lot of streets, you will tell him however many times he needs. And so as a protector, you're doing those things. And that was a little bit what the pastor was doing for you. He was protecting you when he didn't need to. The second one is you're a coach. And that's when you're pushing and teaching and challenging. And, like your son that's 3, you're challenging him to put on his own shoes.
Mm-hmm.
You're challenging him to do things that 3-year-olds do.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some things he's lazy. He
Mm-hmm.
doesn't want to do 'em. He loves to do, 5-year-old things in some areas of his life, but some things that he should do, he's like lazy. So that's where you got to coach him.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a consultant, and consulting starts young, tweens.
Mm-hmm.
Some people think you don't consult until they're out of the house. And what do you do as a consultant? Hey, what have you tried? What's worked? What do you think you should do? What are your friends telling you should do? What's your heart telling you should do? And helping them learn how to process.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're doing CrossFit, same way, you're more of a consultant than you are a coach, even though you're a coach, but you're never a protector. Because if you're a protector, you don't have the best relationship with your clients. And like with your 20-year-old daughter, you have to be full go consultant because she's trying to she's knowing that you got married before. Is she married?
Mm-mm.
You've already been married by her age.
Mm-hmm.
You're pretty close to having a kid. You've already been a cheerleader, for the Texans. So in her head, she's comparing herself to your life, her life to your life. So you just got to go, hey girl, what are you thinking? Because you can't tell her what to do. If you tell her what to do, you end up stepping in the role of the pastor.
Mm-hmm.
Told you what to do. So what in your shift message, what is the thing that, because you can't emphasize all 6 the same, and different people need different things, and some people need a little bit of everything. What is the thing where you see the biggest movement, the biggest change, the biggest improvement?
Your mindset, fitness. I would say fitness and nutrition together, of course, but fitness, movement is medicine. This is the action taking and where they can really start to strengthen their mindset and where they figure out how important nutrition is. So, and their fitness, that whole fitness component, I strongly believe strength training is the way to go. I think that is the foundation of all movement. Of course, that is not as important to me as them developing the consistency and the habit, that daily habit of getting movement in and then gradually building on that. So as far as what allows them to stay the most consistent is what, I is most important to me, but where they're going to see the most results, short term and long term, and live the best quality life possible is through actual strength training. And then, of course, building on that, CrossFit encompasses all of those things, functional fitness and functional gymnastics, which is a big piece and pretty much the main piece of what I teach and how I approach fitness. Yeah, that's fitness and mindset. They all work together, of course, but that is, would be probably tied with mindset. I think that's where I grew the most was my mindset when I started CrossFit. And I wasn't new to hard physical training and weightlifting or anything, but it was the approach and the method behind the madness of what makes CrossFit CrossFit. And it was just something that was it was taking very familiar ways of training, but combining in them in a way that I had never done before in that fashion. And over time, over the last 17 years, really, since I started CrossFit and I've been doing it, I really have I don't think I have done any less than like 3 actual CrossFit sessions in a week, maybe 2, since that time. It stayed a really solid, constant in my life. And the biggest thing, I've definitely gotten stronger and seen a lot of progress through all of that. But the biggest thing is my mindset. And I noticed too, pretty soon after, the stronger I got physically, the even stronger I was getting mentally and emotionally. And the more I leaned into the discomfort of the physical discomfort, knowing that if I could do that, and I was able to complete a workout that looked nearly impossible when I started, and in the middle didn't know if I would actually be able to finish the workout, and then being able to figure out how to mentally break it up so that it wasn't mental overwhelm in the middle of that, and focus on just what was right in front of me, that next rep, and keeping myself moving forward rather than getting stuck in, that discomfort and just quitting, which would have been super easy to do. Figuring out how to then move forward, take that next step, get that next rep, made it that much more, I guess, mentally accessible when I was approaching challenging times in my life or overcoming past trauma, tough stuff that I hadn't really dealt with. And so that right there allowed me to, really, that was probably the biggest, most powerful piece to that. And why I really, truly believe that if everybody focused on just getting something in consistently on the daily, even if that's taking a 10-minute walk, starting there and then just gradually building across time, everything is going to improve, especially and most importantly, their mindset and just mental health in general.
Nicole, you hadn't seen somebody that you were friends with when you were 17 and you ran into them at the airport. You went back home to see some family and you ran into them. What would be the biggest change they would see in you? Is it how you talk? Is it what you look like? Is it the energy you have? Is it, what is the biggest, what would be the thing that shocked them the most?
If I went back
No, if you met somebody you haven't seen since you were 17.
Oh, gotcha. Ooh, I am fitter, that's for sure. I was fit then though, but I don't know because I was definitely that's a good question.
What's your change or biggest improvement?
My mindset for sure.
Can I tell you what I think it is?
Sure.
Awareness. You know what you're thinking now.
Mhm.
You're thinking about what you're thinking about. You've got this framework. You've written this book. You're coaching these people. You have an awareness. So back then you were going through the motions. You mentioned that gymnastics trained you
Mhm.
just to go to the next event, go to the next rep. And now you're thinking before you're acting and you're wondering, people that are aware also want to know why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
Back then, a lot of times we didn't know why we did what we did.
Mhm.
Right. So I would say awareness and why, just as a, only knowing you for 50 minutes, that's what I would say. So, well, I want to thank you for being on Pro Mindset today. And I would love for people that are interested to be able to track you down, buy your book. Can you kind of review how they can reach you and find you?
Yes, I am on Instagrams. It's my name, Nicole Zapoli. My book is on Amazon, but it's also on my website, nicolezapoli.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being on Pro Mindset today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Hey, it's Craig Domann, the host of Pro Mindset Podcast. I want to thank you for listening or watching today's show. And you can catch us every week on the normal social media platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and all the listening podcast platforms. I hope you enjoyed today's show. And more importantly, I hope you gained a pro mindset insight. Please be sure to rate and review Pro Mindset Podcast. And I look forward to catching up with you on our next show.